Welcome to Heritage Acres Homestead. I'm Chas. Here you'll find our family as we strive to live a life that pleases the Lord. We do our best to make the most out of what we've been given, so we'd like to invite you to come along and join us on our journey.
Good morning, y'all. Welcome to Heritage Acres Homestead. I'm Chas. I'm thankful you're here with me this morning. And as you can see, I'm breaking beans. Now, with green beans, or even purple green beans, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to break them. And this is something that over the years, my kids always helped me with. Even sometimes if it was the evening, my husband would help me. I remember helping Mama and Nanny, and it was just, even when my kids were little, sometimes we would can at my mama's house, and we would sit and break them, and the kids would help us. It's just sweet memories. But the first thing you got to do is break the beans, and that truly can be one of the, the longest parts, especially if you're doing it by yourself. But it's easy work and it's enjoyable work, and sometimes you can just turn something on YouTube and watch it while you're doing it, or a show or an audiobook, or whatever. Or if you have somebody, if you're fortunate enough to have somebody there with you, then of course you get good conversation. But the first thing I wanted to say is I did not grow these beans myself. I bought them. And I talked with you about in my garden story that I did or my garden video I did, that I wanted to plant green beans, and I still do. But the problem was the ones that I have, the seeds I have to plant, need to be trellised. And I don't have any cattle panels that I was going to trellis them on, because we used them when we were having when we were having the issues with the pigs. The pigs were getting out, and we had to fix the fence, and so there went our cattle panels. But so right now, this is basically how I did it. Right now, cattle panels are like $30-something. I remember when we first started buying them, they were like $20 maybe. But they're well over 30. They may even be more than that. I haven't priced them in a year or two. But they're pricey. And so I weighed the cost. I said, okay, I'm going to need at least 2. So I'm looking at $60 or more, depending on what they are right now. And they could be different prices in your areas. I'm a small town, rural, area, so it might be cheaper here than it would be if you were in a bigger place. But I'm going to just say 2 would be at least $60. And or I can just go ahead and buy the green beans from a farmer that I know. And I weighed the odds, and I thought, I'm just going to support the farmer that I know and buy the green beans. Now, that doesn't mean I want to do that every year, because I do want to plant my own green beans. But this year, this was the best option for me. I am like, if you've been on Instagram with me, I am running behind. Last week we had Bible school, and everything just seems to be, everything's starting to come in, everything's starting to needing to be done, and I feel like I'm running on all 4 cylinders and, just crazy busy. And so I want to, I want to make the most use of my time, my energy, because I ain't 20 no more. Not even close. So this, and I have no problem with it. And I've told y'all that from the get-go. Y'all, you don't have to grow everything. You don't have to grow anything. You can grow something, but you don't have to grow it all. So just, even if you don't grow anything, you can support the people who do. If there's just no time and no effort for you to grow anything, or no place for you to grow anything, then support people who can and do. It's a whole lot better than not. in my opinion. So anyways, this was our choice for this year. And my husband just kind of says, you know what you need to do, and I support that. And he just knows that we need so many green beans put up because I tell him. Because he's not the cook around here by any stretch, and that's fine by me. I'll tell you, when we first started talking and seeing each other, I went over to see him one evening, and in his house he had, I think it was 2 gallons of milk, because he's a big milk drinker, a can of asparagus, a slab of ham in his freezer, a couple of Hot Pockets, and a bottle of maple syrup in his cabinet. And that was it. And, but I'll tell you, and this might sound like I'm bragging a little bit, but I took that ham and I thawed it, I cooked it up, put a little maple syrup on it. I cooked those asparaguses up. I had him a glass of milk, and he had supper one evening, and he was so impressed by that. But yeah, I'm very much a gal that can make something from nothing. At least that's what I try to do. But so anyways, we are working on these green beans, and these are, I'm trying to think of the name. I'll have to think for a minute. Louisiana purple pods, that's it. Louisiana purple pod beans. Now they are beautiful and vibrant purple right now, but once we can them, they will turn green. So don't think, ooh, I'm getting purple green beans on my shelf. They're not going to be purple the whole time. As soon as they get cooked, they turn green, but they're really good. And they remind me of the old-fashioned white half runners. And I have a friend who, she has saved seeds. She got her seeds, I think, from an old couple who had like the original white half runners. White half runners are pretty special around here. Everybody loves them. But they are runner beans, so they've got to grow up. And so again, you got to trellis them. So anyways, these are reminiscent of those white half runners, but they're beautiful and purple. So anyways, what I'm going to do is I'm going to work here on snapping these beans, or breaking the beans, and you will probably see a process here. You'll probably see me come back a little later with a different shirt or something, because it may be tomorrow before I start canning them, because I know Mama and I are gonna run to the Mennonite market in the morning, and so I may just work on breaking these today and making that zucchini up into muffins for the freezer while I have it, and then can these come tomorrow. So anyways, I will, of course, speed it up for you so you won't have to sit through a whole long spiel, but green beans are something that's easy to can. Now, you will need a pressure canner for canning green beans. I have heard people that do it in a water bather, but they're not a water bath canning type of bean. They need to be pressured. And I'm not a stickler like some are, and I'm definitely not one that's going to get on social media and make fun of people for doing things different ways, or trying to act like I know it all. But there are some guidelines that even those of us who don't follow every single rule in the rule book, there are still some guidelines that we follow. Now, when you're canning, there are high acid foods and low acid foods. And low acid foods, they need to be pressured. High acid foods can be water bath or steam canned. That's why I do my jellies or my jams and fruits. All those I do a water bath with, or I do steam canning most of the time now. Water bathing, I tell y'all, I may not do much water bathing anymore because it's just so much easier to use a steam canner. But they, you want to use the water bather or the steam canner for high acid foods. I do my salsa in the steam canner. There is controversy, of course, as with everything, over water bathing or pressure canning tomatoes. I almost said it the way I say it around here, tomatoes. I'm not uneducated. I'm not a hillbilly hick. I just talk like one. So when I do my tomatoes, I usually use a steam canner or water bather, but I also add a little bit of acid in there just to make sure it's acidic enough. And by that I mean I usually end up adding a little vinegar in my salsa, or a little lemon juice or citric acid into my pasta sauce, or tomato sauce. But that's for another day. We ain't gonna talk about tomato sauce and stuff like that today. I was just kind of telling you about pressure canning. So I have also done a few videos that are quite a bit older that talk about the pressure canner, the water bath canner, and some tools that you'd need if you were going to start canning. I probably need to do an updated one and talk about the steam canner, because I didn't have that back when I did those videos. But there's a new thing out there that is an electric pressure canner, and I'd like to have one of those, y'all. I think they're a little over $200 though, and they I think they do about 5 quarts maybe at a time, but it's all hands off, which is just really, really tempting. Because with pressure canning, I know people say, oh, I'm scared to do it. I've seen canners blow up. My mama told me about a canner that blew up or whatnot. Yeah, you could have a canner blow up, but it's unlikely because they've made them a much more safe thing to use. And there's locking mechanisms, and if you follow the rules by putting your water in and doing the time and releasing the steam the way you're supposed to, you shouldn't have an issue. So I'm going to keep on snapping these beans, and I'll come back with you when we move on to our next step, whether that be this evening or tomorrow. Y'all, I've got my pressure canner. We're getting ready to can the beans. So here's our pressure canner. In the bottom there is a little thing that sits on the bottom so that your jars won't sit directly on the bottom of the canner. To my canner, now this is important, you need to look at your instructions. Every canner is different. For mine, and it's just a little old-fashioned Presto that came from Walmart. Who knows how long ago. But to my pressure canner, you add 3 quarts of water. So I'm going to go ahead and add that water. I've got 1 there, and then I've got 2 in the half gallon. Alright, there's my water. I've got my lid. I've got my little gauge here. Now mine does not, or jiggler, mine doesn't have a gauge. That's all right too. More of the newer ones are going to have a gauge, or the more expensive ones are going to have a gauge, but mine doesn't. So what I want to do, this is what I do each time before I go over it. I check the seal, make sure it's still pliable, not cracked. I take this little part where the steam can come out and make your jiggler work. I look through it and make sure I can see through it. That means it's not clogged. I make sure this little valve is cleared out, and I make sure this little valve is cleared out. Now that's what's on mine. You want to check your own depending on what you have. I will list mine down in the bottom. I'll put a link to it, but for mine it has these weights. I can get them off. This is 5 pounds of pressure if it's just this by itself. If you add 1 ring, that means it's 10 pounds of pressure. If you add 2 rings, that means you've got 15 pounds of pressure. And that depends on what you're canning and where you are. For us, we always use 10 pounds of pressure. So, kind of across the board. If I'm doing any pressure canning, it's all like 10 pounds. So, the canner is prepped. I'm going to go ahead and move my jars back. And then, this is another thing that I'm going to do. And I'll take you over there with me. But, some people want to sterilize their jars prior to use. I do not think that that is necessary. The reason I don't think that is necessary is because we are about to put these jars, as long as they're good and clean now, I do make sure they're good and clean. They're over there and we're about to wash them. As long as they are good and clean, then that pressure in this pot is going to get so high, if there is any type of bacteria, any type of microorganism, it's going to be annihilated. It's going to be burned up because of the extreme heat and pressure. So, as long as my jars are nice and clean, that's good enough for me. As y'all know, it's difficult for me to find a good angle, so this is a little bit good, but you've got some of my plant in your way. Then I think that's okay. So I'm going to wash my jars. Now again, we've got good hot soapy water, and as I'm washing them, I'm going to go and I'm going to look around the edge of the jar here. Do I see any cracks? Does the jar look good and solid? As long as I inspect that jar and give it a good thorough washing, we're good to go. And I don't know how many jars of beans we're going to have, so I'm just going to wash up all these, and then we'll assess how many I have once I'm done, and we can wash more if we need to. Last night my daughter set up and we broke beans for several hours after she got home. And what we did was just, we broke them, we put them in these containers, and now I'm washing them. Clean hands, of course, but I'm washing them. And then I have my jar with a lid, so we washed them, or I'm washing them just with some cold water or room temperature water, either way, and clean hands. Just kind of agitate them around a little bit, make sure any debris falls off. I don't do this before I break them, I do it after I break them. Just how I was taught, and to me it makes sense. That way if you get any more debris on them while you're breaking, Like sometimes we break outside. It's too hot last night, so we sat inside and watched something and broke beans. So now I'm going to take my jar with a funnel and I'm going to start dropping the beans in there. Remember, the jar is a good clean jar. We've already established that. I'm just going to fill it to the neck. And then I'm going to press down. Now my jar is quite full, and this is the neck of the jar right here, where the shoulders of the jar, right there's the neck, okay? So you want it no more than that. Also, with green beans, I use a teaspoon of salt. And I like Redmond's. So I add my teaspoon of salt. And when I was a little girl, I remember when we would do green beans over at Nanny Red's house, and I was the salt girl. Put that teaspoon of salt in there. So if you've got little ones around and they love to be helpers, let them help you. I'm adding just a couple more beans. It's kind of settled just a little bit. So you can give it a little shake, a little tap, make sure it's good and full. And then I'm going to do it right here simply because that way you can see. I've got, this is another thing I don't do. So what I do is called raw pack. Okay, so that means I do not put my beans in a hot pot and cook them before I put them in the canner. I put them in raw. I put my salt in, and then I add water. Now, if you're already heating the water in your canner, then you can add boiling water if you want to. You can add room temperature water if you want to. You just don't want to put like ice cold water in here and put it into a hot canner. If your canner is not heating up already, then don't worry about it. You can use room temp because it's not going to have that shock of transferring hot to cold, cold to hot. I've got some warm water. That's just what I chose to do. I was running warm water for dishes, so I just filled me a jar up with warm water. And now I'm going to pour that over my beans. And again, we're going to the neck of the jar. There we go. Now, I'm just showing you start to finish, or well, start to almost finish on one jar. That way, when I do the rest of them, you'll kind of have the idea of what's going on while you watched one whole jar be processed. All right, now I'm going to take a towel. I'm going to run around the edge of my jar just to make sure it's clean. Again, I'm going to take my lid. Sometimes I'll call these flats. So if you hear me say flats, that's what I mean. I'm talking about this new lid. Put that on top. Add your ring. So you're going to put that on. Now you're going to hear the term fingertip tight a lot in the canning world. Okay, if it still feels like this, that's not good. You're going to spin it, and just until you get resistance. You don't want to really get in there and get it on there. You don't want that, okay? You want to put it on and just give it a good snug but not hard turn. Okay, so there, this one is ready for the canner. My canner holds 7 jars, so I'm going to do the other 6 just like I did this one, and get them in the canner, and I'll show you how we proceed from that. But see, this is not hard. This is super simple. You can do it. Bye, Carly. I love you. Have a good night. Okay, here's something that I did not notice earlier. This one may be totally fine, but there is a little bit of a, I don't know if it's in the manufacturing of the jar itself or what, but I don't trust it. It looks like, I'll see if I can get you close up in and see this, but it looks like a ridge running right around the bottom of a jar. And oftentimes when you have jars break in your canner, the bottoms will just break straight off. So when you do go and look your jars over, like I said, look for any cracks up here, any cracks along the edges or down the middles, and any issues with the bottom. And this one, I don't want to waste any beans at all. And if it breaks in my canner, that's a jar of wasted beans. So I'm not going to tempt it, and I'm not going to use this jar. I'll move on to a different jar. This jar does not have that ridge around the bottom. Like I said, that jar may be fine, but I'm not going to tempt it. Everything about this jar looks solid. So we'll continue on. Thought while I was working I would tell you a couple of other little things that I used to do, but I don't do anymore. One thing that I used to do was I used to boil my flats before I put them on. Well, I reckon technology has come a long way, and I do not boil my flats before I put them on my jars anymore. I just put them straight on and then process with them. So if you look at any of my old videos, you may see me still boiling flats. That's one thing that I've cut out. So let me just go into a quick little thought process with you here. If you're boiling or pressuring anything that's like pressuring, it doesn't really matter, because you're going to build up so much pressure and heat and steam that it's going to, like I said, you're going to kill anything that's there, if there is anything there. If it's water bathing or steam canning, if it's 10 minutes worth of processing, same thing. If you've got 10 minutes worth of processing done on that, you don't have to worry about like boiling your jars before you put your stuff in there. Just have them clean, put your stuff in it, process it, you're good to go. So you may see people, and you may see some of my old videos where I do boil the lids. I don't anymore. And if you feel like you need to still sterilize jars because so-and-so told you to, that's totally fine. You go right ahead. I feel it unnecessary, and if we don't make canning something that people feel like they can do, this art will die. It will not prevail amongst all this negativity that is out there that goes around canning. I have a thing on my Facebook, and every time I talk about it, it says something like, If you think canning is scary, you ought to check the ingredients on some of the stuff you buy in the supermarket. Simple statement. People get fired up in arms over it. And every single time, every time someone tells me I'm going to kill everybody, kill my family, teaching people to kill their families by canning their own food. Guys, we have been canning food for generations now. And you know what? Things are better, like we have stoves in our kitchen. We have hot water running in our kitchen. We have soaps. We have all these different things that canning should be less scary than it was 50 years ago. But instead, we have all these alphabet groups and these hovering, I'm not going to master this and that titles that want to tell you that you can't do it without proper guidance, instructions, and everything under the sun. I am showing you how simple canning can be. It's simple, or I couldn't do it, or I wouldn't do it. To me, this is valuable work. This is worthy work that I'm putting on my shelves to feed my family. I adore my family. I would lay down my life for my family. So why in heaven's name would I do anything to jeopardize them? I'm not. I want the best for them. And putting good food in jars and processing those jars is one of those ways that I serve my family. All right, so I seem to have a little rant lately in these videos. I'm getting on a trend, but we're going to continue to get these beans put in these jars and get these jars in our canner. So rant over. It wasn't really a rant. A spiel. More of a spiel. Spiel over. But I want you to feel confident. I want you to feel capable. And I don't want people to make you feel like you can't do this. Did I finish my story earlier about when I'd go to Nanny Red's house? So we had, we would sit outside and the mamas would break beans. Sometimes the kids would get to help too. Sometimes we were made to help. But everybody came. I mean, it was just like the mamas were there with the kids during the day. The evenings, the daddies came. We'd have some dinner. Or if it was a weekend, they'd be out playing horseshoes, or maybe they went hunting during, or not hunting, I guess it wasn't hunting season, but they'd go fishing or something, four-wheeling, who knows what they do. And then they come and they throw horseshoes, sit out and talk, and it was just a family time. And I have such fond memories of those days. But I do remember when I graduated, because I was the oldest of all the grandbabies. And I remember I got to put the salt into the jars. And that was pretty high up on the ladder, in my opinion, that I got to do that. And I remember graduating up to the coleslaw girl, which meant every dinner I took the cabbage. There was always a big head of cabbage. Had to get cut up into quarters, and I put it in there, and I cranked that manual grinder or shredder, and I'd shred that cabbage for coleslaw. Because what southern meal are you going to have without coleslaw? which we're having coleslaw this weekend. I'm making it, but it's precious times, y'all. And like last night, Carly and I sat there and it was dark, and so we did sit in here and break for a while. Shannon and I broke for a while, and then we sat in there and watched TV and broke for a while. But it was sweet. It was so sweet to me that she offered. And especially around corn days, corn is work. Now, I ain't even kidding. It is work. And we will all, because it's so messy, but we will all sit out on the porch. And I have pictures. In Denver was just a little bitty thing, but like the whole family was on the porch. And how that happened, I'll never know. But everybody was here. Everybody was sitting on that porch, and there was shucks, and there was silks, and there was corn, kernels all over the place, corn cobs, and everybody had a job, and we were just sitting out there, and we just talked and shucked that corn, and it's precious. When Denver was just a little bitty thing, I remember I went and got some English peas, and that baby helped me shell those peas until I was done. I mean, he helped. He loved it. Children want a job. They want to feel included. And I always had my kids work alongside me. They may not have always wanted to do what I was doing, but to talk with them and to interact with them and just to be with them while you're working is a special thing. And so don't miss out on that just simply because they can't do all that you can do. Give them little jobs. Denver, I'd give him a little bowl with a few peas in it, and he would work on shelling those peas. I remember one morning, the kids saw me up early one morning, and this was way back when they used to get up early and not sleep because they stay up half the night because they work late. But they were little, and they came in, and I was breaking beans, and without words, without anything, they just sat down and they started helping. And it warms my heart. But there is something so special about even like I didn't produce this, but like putting this up as a family there's something about it. And I'll tell you, when you're involved with preparing or growing or fixing, whether it's cooking or whatever, or preserving your food, it automatically tastes better, I think, because there is something about that satisfaction of doing it that comes with the thing. And maybe that's just a psychological bonus or benefit, but it's true. The other night, I'll tell you one more story and then I'll get back to it. But the other night, I was helping Cameo and Houston up at their house, and Denver was getting a little rambunctious. So Houston gave him he's got this little knife that can cut, but you could saw your arm with it. It's not going to cut you, but it will cut vegetables. I've never seen anything like it. Cameo gave me one for him too, but we just use it for Play-Doh most of the time. But he was cutting those vegetables. He was determined. He was so proud, and he sat there and he ate those vegetables after he worked so hard on cutting them. But I brought him some zucchini and squash from the garden, and that baby worked on cutting those vegetables for his daddy while he was cooking. And it was precious. And he valued that, and he ate up those vegetables because we praised him on how good he did on helping prepare the supper. So, anyways, that's just a sweet little tidbit. I'm adding to it. But I have pictures too of him helping me do these beans. And Wesley will be big enough soon, he'll be able to help too. But involve your kids. Of course I'm not going to have him over there with the canner, But
All right.
while
Now,
he
this
can
lid on
help
this
me by
door.
putting beans in a jar. He can help me by putting that salt in, or helping me pour the water, or adding the lids. There's things he can do. Just like I did with my kids when they were big, when they were little, and now I'm doing with my grandbabies. So involve your family, even if it's just for a little bit. The time they're together is special. And I said that was the last thing, but that's how I feel about washing dishes too. I remember standing alongside my sister and us washing dishes together and talking, and it was fond memories. Even though, we may not have wanted to do it at the time, and we probably complained because we'd rather be doing something else. But you kind of have to talk while you're standing there, or you're just, it's almost like it opens yourself up to stand there and do dishes with someone while you're washing and someone's rinsing and putting away, or whatever the task may be. But involve the family. It's important. Now, another thing, when you are breaking your beans, if you come across a very leathery shell that doesn't want to break and it just kind of bends, just pop the beans out, and that way you're not having to, you're not wasting the beans. You can still add the beans into your jar. You're just not going to use that rubbery shell. And I think I said this earlier, but I just want to make sure I have reiterated it. The reason I like raw pack is because I want my beans to not be just completely mush when I go to cook them. If I were to boil or get my beans super hot now, then put them through the pressure canner, then cook them, I'm not going to have anything left. Now, my beans are not going to be like snap beans. These are like Southern style beans, which we love, but this is how, this is how we eat them the majority of the time. What was that? But, just remember that this is the reason that we do them this way. We want to have a bit of texture still with our beans. We don't want them mush. So, doing a raw pack to put in the canner helps keep the integrity of the bean a bit more. All right, like I said, 7 quart jars will fit in my canner. So there is 7. Let me show you. I've already got my water in there. Remember to look toward your book to see how many quarts you need to put in yours. On my canner, there's a little arrow here that you line up with the arrow on this handle, and then we line it up, it goes down, and then we twist. All right, that makes a nice seal. I turn my heat on, and yes, I do have a flat top stove. I've been canning on it for 30-something years now. Y'all know my age. Y'all know I don't care. I'll be 49 in November, Lord willing. I got my heat on. I'm waiting. Let me show you. I'm waiting for this little nozzle to pop up. And when it does, I should start seeing some steam coming out of here. Then I will add my weight. And once that weight starts doing this little number right here, that's when I'll start my timer. Okay, so we're going to wait on those things to happen, and I'll show you each step. Alright, y'all. My little vent popped up. I'm going to put my gauge on there. And remember, we won't start timing until that starts dancing. It'll be like this. I'll show you what it looks like when it's ready. So now that we have our jiggler dancing, we're going to set a 25-minute timer. For pints, you want to do 20. Quarts, you want to do 25. Once the time is up, I'll turn off the stove. I'll let the pressure come down on its own. Don't be trying to wiggle that thing and get the steam to come out. This is not an Instant Pot. You don't want to do that. You want to let it come out all on its own. You want to let the vent drop, the steam stop, all of it. Then let it sit for a good 10-15 minutes if you can wait that long, longer if you can. I have several that I need to do, so I'll probably give it 15 minutes, open it up, and then move them out. Or maybe I'll just open up the top, let them sit in there for a little bit and move them out. But if you will let them stay in there until it starts to cool down a little bit on its own, you're going to get less siphoning out of your jars. And what I mean by siphoning is, I'm going to show you some, but I don't really have any that lost a lot. But sometimes when you're canning things with liquid in it, a lot of that liquid will come out if you transfer them too quickly. So if you can give it just a little while to set in your pot after all the pressures come down, you're less likely to have siphoning. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to finish jarring up the rest of these, and they're going to be ready to go. As soon as this one's done, we'll get the next batch going. This would be a great time to have one of those automatic or electric canners. That way I could have one going on the stove, one going over here plugged up against the wall, and I could double duty it. But we'll do what we can do, and like we always do, make it work. I'll probably be canning through the night, but that's okay, because like right now, this is all I got to do. I just got to let it work, wait for my timer to be done, step on to the next step. So it's not hard, it just takes a little time. Alright, our timer is gone off. I'm going to carefully reach over here, turn this off. Leave it alone. Don't do anything else. Don't move it. Nothing. Just let it be. It's going to come down in pressure by itself. Alright. Not a great angle, but so the timer has stopped. I turned the heat off. The pressure is down. It's been sitting here at least, I don't know, 15 or 20 minutes. So carefully, I'm going to twist this and lift this off. And you're going to see that this is still very hot. You will likely see that there are bubbles, and it's kind of still boiling in the jars as I pull them out. So I'm going to use my handy dandy tool here, my jar lifter, and I'm going to lift them out and set them right here on my station. You can also see that that purple color is no more. It fades when you pressure can them or cook them. It turns green. Now, my friend Ruth Ann, she said that if you add lime to your green beans, they will stay more green. I didn't do it. I just let them be. All right, so there's our first canner done. What I'm going to do is just, even though I know like where the line is for 3 quarts, I'm going to dump this out, put in 3 fresh new quarts of water, and start the process all over again. And y'all, it is honestly just as simple as that. Now let me show you the jars here. See how I told you they were still boiling? They really haven't lost much water. The green beans may float up. That's not a big deal. That just means that we didn't pack them as tightly as we could have. Thankfully, there's not been any breakage. It looks like most of them already have a seal that's down, but we're not going to move them. Yeah, the seal's already punched down on all of them, but we're not going to move them because we want to allow them to sit here just like this, undisturbed, for at least 24 hours. That's going to make sure the seal makes a nice solid hold, and once it does, we'll take the band off, we'll wipe them down, date them, and put them over on the pantry shelf. Before I close the video, I just got to show you. Okay, I'm a sucker for beautiful jars. These are some, see, look like a quilted pattern. These are Better Homes and Gardens. I have no idea what year they're from. Way back in the early 2000s, I'm sure. This is one of my favorite jars. Let's see if you can see that. It's got the Liberty Bell. Got a crack on it. It says 1776 to 1976. On the other side, it just says Mason. I love this jar. I think I've already used one of the others I was going to show you, but like these Golden Harvest, they're pretty. They have like a cornucopia on the front and say Golden Harvest Mason. But there's one, I think it's in the canner right now. It is probably, besides this one, probably one of my favorite jars. It's got a basket of garden vegetables in it, and I can't remember if it says anything, but I love old jars. And I love it when people ask me if I want, like, hey, my grandma gave me jars. I don't use them, you want them? I'm always like, absolutely yes, because I will use them. I will absolutely 100% use them, because now as our family is growing, I'm not only canning for my family right here that lives in this house, but for my daughter and son-in-law and my grandbabies too. And I'm sure, you know, she'll can alongside me when she can. But right now, the boys, they take a lot of her time. So anything I can, I'll just make extra and give it to them. But yeah, so if you see any interesting jars, make sure you let me know, because I really love seeing them. Now, as I start this new batch, like I said, I poured the water that was in the canner out, put fresh 3 new quarts in there, because that water still, I mean, it was still scalding hot. And our jars have been sitting here and they're waiting to go in, so they're not hot. So we don't want that transfer of very, very hot to not so hot. I mean, even though they're not cold, it's just better not to go from one extreme to the other. So everything's going in here pretty much room temp. We start it all over again. See, I told y'all could do it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to be very present in the comments as I usually am. So if you have any questions, make sure you ask, and I'll do my best to answer them down there. Yeah, that's just it, y'all. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope this gives you some courage to start your pressure canning journey. And may you just have a wonderful day. God bless you. Bye-bye.